Okay, today I want to talk about aggregate supply. This is the total planned supply of all the producers in the country. So we've got everything, all goods, services, all private, public or third sector producers uh, producing this supply. And this supply this is categorized in two phases. So you've got SRAS, that's the short-term aggregate supply. This is different because it's before the producers react to changes in the aggregate demand or in the price level, so they haven't employed extra people or bought new machines, etc. And then the long-term aggregate supply, which is that supplied after they've made changes and adjusted to the new conditions of the economy. So if we look at the aggregate supply short-term curve, we can see on an axis of price level here and real GDP here, it goes like this. It goes up, it increases in price as it increases as the real GDP increases. There are several reasons for this. Well, we've got three to be precise. The economists have identified three. You've got the profit effect. So as prices go up, there's an incentive and a capacity to produce more. You know, if prices go up and the costs remain the same, obviously there's more profit, and that can increase supply, that can be reinvested, that can encourage greater supply. But also the cost effect. So this is basically in the short term, if suppliers are increasing supply, in the short term they'll experience some diseconomies of scale. That means that they're going to have a bit higher average cost because they'll have to pay overtime, which is more higher rate than a normal time. So they haven't yet had time to take on more people, or maybe they have to, run a machine for longer than it's used to, and maybe it breaks down, and they've got this cost effect, which means they have to put up the price in the short term. But there's also the misinterpretation effect, which is, if price is going up, that will be misinterpreted by the suppliers that their products or services are popular and they need to produce more, not just replenish supply, but actually increase output, thinking that they're obviously onto a good thing because the prices are going up. So those are the reasons for the shape of the curve. We can move along the curve if the prices are changing, or we're supplying less or more. We're moving along the curve, but there is a possibility also of shifting the curve. Obviously, it's good for the economy if we shift it towards the right rather than the left. But sometimes it shifts to the left anyway, unintentionally. Reasons for shift, we think back to the market supply curve. There's similar reasons. So you've got changes in prices of factors of production. Maybe wages are going up, and so that means the curve will move to the left, or maybe price of energy at the moment is going up, and that will be a break on suppliers, and that will move the curve to the left. Or maybe a change in taxes. Maybe if they put taxes down, that will shift the curve to the right. Or a change in factor productivity, maybe a new generation of robots can take over from workers and increase production. A change in quantity of resources, not just quality of resources, but quantity. For example, you've got lots of immigrants. At the moment, immigrants come to Italy and they do a lot of fruit picking, and that maybe will increase the supply of fruit and vegetables. For the long-term aggregates supply, there's two models. You've got the Keynesian model, which assumes that the economy is not working at full capacity, that there are unemployed people, that there are empty warehouses, or maybe resources that aren't being used. And so increasing the GDP doesn't necessarily mean that the prices need to go up. They can offer the same price for unemployed people. They can keep the prices, the wages at the same level, for example. But then there comes a point where you have a bit of a bidding war, where maybe people are getting scarce or land is getting scarce, etc. And prices start to move up because of the cost of the factors of production are moving up. So, and at some point we're at full capacity and unable, all the resources are being used, all the scarce land, labour, capital and enterprise are being used to their full capacity, and then we can't go up in real GDP, so supply can't move this way, but the prices might just be moving up, as things overheat in the economy. So that's the Keynesian model. The classical economist model assumes, this is the long-term aggregate supply curve, it's just straight up because it assumes we're already at full capacity. In the long term, we will be operating in full capacity, and there won't be any straight line, horizontal line, or inclined growth line, but just a straight one. And here we can explain this by the short term. This is the long term in the middle, but in the short term the firms are finding that they increase supply, but then their costs will increase, and they'll have to cut back on production because they're already at full production, full capacity, and maybe the resources are being overused, and so they'll cut back, and the short-term supply curve is shifting this way, and we can see in the long term they haven't really produced anything extra, maybe for a short period of time, but just the prices are just going up. So the classical model just assumes in the long term we're already at full capacity, and any gain in any attempt to intensify use of the resources will just lead to returning to the old output quantity and just an increase in prices. Now, causes for the shift in the long-term aggregate supply can be for two reasons. You've got a changing quantity of resources. Maybe you've got more people, more machines, more factories, or changes in the quality of resources. For example, better educated people, more training, better machines, higher, later generation of robots, etc. Let's look at the changing quantity. So maybe, for example, you could have net immigration. Maybe immigrants are going up, so you can produce more. Or an increase in retirement age. There will be more workers available for employment in that specific case. More women entering workforce. We assume, at the moment, there's a lot of women that aren't working. If more enter the workforce, there'll be a higher quantity of resources. More investment will, if we build a factory, that will increase the quantity of resources. And discovery of new resources. If you discover oil in Italy, then you can have lower prices for energy, and then obviously that will shift in the long term the aggregate supply. Alternatively, the quality here, as I said before, improved education and training. An example of this, for example, they're trying to improve teaching in schools, and they're working on didactics, and that by doing that there will be an increased supply in education. We've got technologies like Moodle, I think it's called, which you've got professors in America teaching millions of people in a class and using video lessons and all the technology. So advances in technology also, also robots, having a higher generation of robot, later generation of robot means that you're going to get something that's better and maybe produce better and cheaper. So these things will improve the quality of resources. Just thinking about advancing in technology. When I first came to Italy, I did some translations. Now, a translator can use apps which, when they translate something in a document, if it's repeated later in the document, throughout the document, it automatically gets translated in the same way, and this really speeds up the translation. So that would be an example of a quality change of resources that will increase supply. We can see in the economy that there is an equilibrium with aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and that's where they meet here is the price and the quantity, the real GDP. So, let's have a look. If it's in disequilibrium, if, for example, the suppliers supply this much at this price, there will obviously, the demand at this price is here. There'll obviously not be enough products and services, and the suppliers will see very quickly that they can increase the price, and so they will want to increase the quantity. And so it should move to equilibrium. Or alternatively, if the suppliers produce this much at this price and this quantity, the demand here at this price is only for this quantity, and the suppliers will find they can't sell all the products and services they produce, and they will want to lower the price to increase the demand, but also they will have to reduce the quantity, because for a lower price they're not prepared to produce so much. So it always goes from disequilibrium towards equilibrium. That's the important thing. Here we've got an invisible hand always moving towards the equilibrium point.